Welcome to the Real Construction Owners Podcast, where we interview real construction owners and individuals who are crushing it in life. Today, we have a special guest, Joshua Hatter, the owner of Postal Vacation Properties, who has a unique story. He's built his net worth over $5 million using real estate. He has joined masterminds. He has some incredible book recommendations. And today, we're going to teach you some very valuable insights. Let's go. What's up, Joshua? How you doing today, buddy?
Living the dream, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure. We're both a part of the mastermind Go Abundance, where men with high net worth get together and do epic things and challenge each other to become better family men, better businessmen, and just better overall. Before we go into some nuggets, I'd like to know your story. Walk us down history lane and tell us who you are and how you got to where you're at and some of the key principles that made you so successful.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me. I actually started out working for a Department of Defense contractor, so in the federal contracting space when I was 20 years old. And I actually did that about 6 months shy of 20 years. So I'm 41 now. Worked from all sizes of businesses, from smaller 8A small businesses, all the way up to large Fortune 500 companies, and even a Fortune 100 company as well. So, kind of have the myriad of experience with the different sizes of federal contractors and the regulations required. But I always wanted to, I felt like my upside was always capped in that world. It's mostly a salaried position in the sales side, which was what I did for almost 20 years. And so, I really wanted to kind of grow beyond that. So I started playing with real estate, bought my first house in 2005 when I was 24, close to the height of the housing crisis, and, probably couldn't afford it at the time. Lender that I used was the 13th largest lender in the United States at the time, and promptly went broke within a couple of years. So interesting time for sure. But I've been extremely fortunate over the last 10 years to have made a lot of right moves in real estate and really enjoy this zero interest rate policy that the Fed had for a long time. And as you said, I actually took a $30,000 401k loan in 2012 to buy my first piece of real estate in downtown Charleston. That was a 1-bedroom condo. And that $30,000 is worth about $5.4 million now. So it's definitely been a crazy ride, but went from buying my own house to doing long-term rentals to short-term vacation rentals, renting a room out of my house, did a house hack, lived in a house while I was renovating it. I'll never do that again. And now actually own bed and breakfasts with a goal of buying boutique hotels within 2 years. So that's kind of the story.
That's so awesome. So, there's so many nuggets of wisdom that you could extrapolate there. He started in government contract sales, and there's a cap if you're a salesperson. If you're a contractor, there's no cap. I want to be very clear. If you own the business, you can make so much money as the owner. But then from there, you were like, man, I got to, get out of this rat race as a salesperson. So you decided to start investing in real estate, and you realized that there is a better way, passive income. And you were like, I got to build my passive income up. So let's talk about passive income. Where are you at with it? You have a total of 60 doors now?
So I have a property management company. It's one of those things, if I had, this grand vision of what my life would be like 10 years ago, I'm not sure that I would have said that I would own a property management company. But I'm one of those guys that got some quotes and said, hey, I'm not paying somebody else 20%. I'll do that myself. So the management company manages about 60 listings now. I own either 100% or at least a piece of a third of those listings. And so my management company manages the bed and breakfasts properties that we bought last year. We bought 2 B&Bs, one in April and one in December. And then I've got a small investment company that I invest my own capital through. And we're actually looking at potentially raising a fund here later this year as well. So kind of just getting that off the ground.
Love that. So if you're a contractor listening and you're like, how does this apply to me? Well, it does apply to you. You make money, and instead of buying the next boat or the next truck, nothing wrong with that at the right time. I suggest investing in your future self. and go buy some real estate. And he manages property in the Carolinas as well as the Smoky Mountains. And those are two phenomenal areas because Airbnb, VRBO, home hoppers, like you can literally buy the asset and then put it on some websites, and then it can create daily and monthly revenue for you. I mean, like I have a house in Costa Rica renting right now that's making me $900 today, tomorrow, the next day. And, you know, it makes thousands of dollars a year. That's just one of the many properties. So if you're a contractor listening in, consider investing in real estate. Now, what are some lessons that you could share to a contractor who doesn't yet invest in real estate? What would you say they need to be on the lookout for, steps they need to take so they can succeed as an investor?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, all the loans that we do now are commercial, right? So the deals are evaluated based on the strength of the deal itself. So whatever the cash flow is, and they're looking at the asset and what we project the cash flow to be. Once you have that track record, you know, it's much easier to get a bank's approval to get the loans, despite what we saw with hospitality and COVID just a couple of years ago. That being said, obviously you don't start out in the commercial side of things, right? So a lot of people, particularly with short-term rentals, you can get a vacation home loan where you only put down 10%, so you can get a 90% loan to value. Even that, to your point, you know, you can buy it in a place that you like to vacation and stay in it, you know, a couple of weeks out of the year, but have it generating income for you and effectively pay for your family vacation in the meantime. So definitely a few hacks like that. I think in terms of starting out, you know, you want to make sure that your credit is great. I always tried to not carry any debt. I've lived like I was broke for a very long time. I finally am trying to start to enjoy some of this. It's a hard mindset to shift from scarcity to abundance. But you know, that's kind of all part of the process, right? Is just really reinvesting in yourself continually over a long period of time. And at some point, you know, you hit that hockey stick and it's a pretty crazy ride.
Yeah, once you get past 10 billion net worth, I hear from our brothers in GoBundance, that is where life begins to just get to a whole new stratosphere. And I'm working on that as well. So with that being said, you know, what are some obstacles for people? What are some challenges that a contractor would face if they buy a vacation home somewhere? Like, what are the things that they don't even know they're going to face, or the issues that they're going to face?
Yeah, it's a really interesting space. So one of the things I like about, you know, vacation rentals themselves have been around for decades, right? I mean, you could always go rent a house in the beach or the mountains years ago, long before Airbnb and even VRBO, now Vrbo. So, you know, certainly have been around for a while, but much more well known. I mean, when I started doing short-term rentals 10 years ago, I remember my old college buddies literally laughing in my face, you know, because I was renting a room out of my house and, you know, laughing at me and drinking coffee in the morning when a guest walks in. But, you know, looking at the execution, especially vacation rentals, there's so many nuances that you have to pay attention to that you don't with long-term rentals. Long-term rentals, if you're getting the doing the proper screening up front, and have a good quality tenant, then you really can have a reliable stream of income from that. The thing that I like about short-term rentals specifically is that the returns have been much better over the last 10 years than long-term rentals. It's always crazy to me, you know, talking to people that have a huge number of doors on the long-term side and then seeing what that equates to on the short-term side. I've got a property now that nets about 10 grand a month, and it's just a single 5-bedroom duplex. So it really doesn't take, if you're in the right market and doing it correctly, it really doesn't take a huge portfolio, you know, $100 million portfolio, managing a bunch of doors to be able to really make some money that can be life-changing and provide financial independence. You do have to pay attention. Every single city has their own regulations. Every single city has realized now they can collect tax revenue from this. And some of them are not so good at doing that. So, you know, you may have to actually like print out a voucher and mail it in if you're not using a specific tax vendor to pay online each month. But so there are little nuances like that. You have to pay attention to licenses and permitting. And every single location is different. But to me, the potential hassle or roadblocks from that are far outweighed by the potential returns.
And do you have an assortment of both long-term and short-term?
I don't actually. So out of necessity, turned that first house I bought in 2005 to a long-term rental. I just refused to, I was upside down at the time and I refused to bring money to the closing table. So I turned it into a long-term rental for about 7 or 8 years and just did not have a good experience. Had a couple of instances where I did not have quality tenants and, cost not $8, $9, $10,000 to get the property back in rentable condition. Of what at the time was, $150,000, $175,000 house, so significant damage to the house. And so I just kind of backed away from it after that, to be honest with you.
And how do you find a good, like, long-term tenant? Because I have never had an issue. I have long-term assets and I find great people. And instead of me telling our audience, how would somebody go about finding a good qualified tenant for long-term?
So I had hired a property management company, and I think that's probably part of the reason I wanted to start a property management company. I think it's different when you approach it as an investor because I look at scenarios through the lens of being an investor, and I try to provide my owner clients what they would want. Looking at things as an investor, it's hard to say if they did the proper credit and criminal background checks on some of the issues that I went through, right? I had a couple of good saving graces that I had some co-signer, parental co-signers on some of those, or I really would have been left out, hanging out to dry. But going through those right credit, criminal, income, background checks, and then communication. Some of it is people will report a small issue. If it doesn't get addressed, I see a lot of, or I should say I saw a lot of value extraction in the long-term rental space, where short-term rentals, you can't do that. You have to continually reinvest in the property because you have the review system, and that kind of keeps people in check on both sides. And so on the long-term side, if problems are ignored, the first couple of times they're reported, at some point, somebody's just not going to report it anymore, right? And then that what may be a minor issue at the time can turn into something major simply because it was ignored. So, I was young in my mid-20s. I probably didn't do a great job at vetting the management company at the time. Certainly would be a different process if I were to do it again now. But yeah, it was just a difficult experience for me back then.
So one thing that I do is I forego a little immediate money, and I hire a trusted real estate agent, and I give them the first month's commission on the rent. And they do all the vetting, they do all the background check, they do take all the phone calls. And by the grace of God, like I've had great tenants, I've never had any issues. And yeah, they've said, hey, this is a problem, and we send somebody out and get it fixed. And they've saved multiple years. Yes, you do have to, get a new tenant every few years, but in my scenario, it was a great experience. Now, I'm curious to know if you could share with our listeners, when they do decide to buy far away, 3, 4, 5+ hours away, and there is a problem, how do you go about fixing it? How do you find the best subcontractor? How do you make sure they're getting it done without you having to be there?
Yeah, that's tough if you're self-managing, right? That's one of the upsides of having a quality property manager is somebody that has that library of vetted contractors that they already have relationships with so they can get a fast response time. If somebody does not intend to hire a property manager and they do have a property that's that far away, I would definitely suggest going through that exercise, during the buying process, and even asking that realtor if they can recommend things like, a handyman, HVAC, like all your basic contractors, right? So if we're entering a new market like we did in 2022 with the Smokies, we're going to make a list of every contractor that we need and make sure we figure that out and have that system in place before we manage anything. So you really want to do that as you're closing on something before you list the property for rent. A little bit of a pain to kind of go through that process, but it's well worth it once, an issue that might only pop up once a year or even once every few years does happen, and you've got that network already established.
Love that. Now, and as far as habits that you've worked to become successful, you mentioned a great book recommendation. Share with our audience that book recommendation and the habit that you have implemented and what it's done for your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked a little bit about Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, who's actually in GoBundance with us, but he's got a great acronym in there, and I kind of adopted a modified version of that. He's got a very succinct, just packed hour of a half a dozen things in his book, and so I kind of modified that to fit, a half hour of the beginning of my day each day. But little things, so the acronym is SABERS, silence, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, and scribing. And scribing is just another word for writing. So that's definitely something that I've taken over the last couple of years of having the good fortune to be in GoBundance and be around guys that have a similar intellect and philosophy on life. Just being able to start each day and really going through what are my couple of goals that I really want to get done for the day. And I think that I'm about 4 months into this, doing it every single day, both in the morning and at night. It took me about 7 to 10 days to notice just setting these like really small goals for that day was helping me knock out some of the larger things that I'd been procrastinating on. That the things that'll take a while, right? But really, the old "how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time" cliche. So that helped me tremendously, and even just the affirmations piece of it. And so going through that and just really kind of pumping yourself up, and the positive self-talk. I'm a huge believer in karma. What you put into the world is going to come back to you at some point. Even if it takes 20, 30 years. So. I think it's really important to kind of put positivity out there. Positivity attracts positivity, just like the other end of the spectrum. So, but it's just about, asking yourself each day, what are you grateful for and what would make today great?
Yeah, that's one of the golden rules. Like, I'm a believer and follower of the Miracle Morning. Me and Hal were buddies back in the day. We sold knives together, and I saw what happened with him firsthand. He got in a car crash, pronounced dead at the scene, and miraculously he was awakened, and he was like almost paralyzed, and he decided to go on this quest, and he found that all the most successful people in life, they did a different habit, and those habits were what you said: silence. They practiced prayer, silence. They did affirmations. They visualized. They did exercise. They did reading, some type of scribing or journaling. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to do all of them. And that's why he created the SABERS methodology. And I do that. And I have a dream board right here, right next to me. And my life is like abundant. Everything comes to me easily and effortlessly because of this practice of, like, when you rewire your subconscious properly and you do it through your prayer and your affirmation, you can see the vision coming true and feel it. And you can hear that award or that moment in time that you are striving to achieve. When you can see it in your mind's eye before it even happens, you're laying like a metaphysical energy of it attracting to you. Even thoughts are energy. Thoughts have power. Just like water, it'll flow down its easiest path. Well, thoughts have power. And if you know how to amplify your thoughts and turn that dial up, you can literally become a radar for whatever it is you want. I wrote a best-selling book on the same topic called Visions to the Top, a millionaire secret formula to productivity and meditation. And basically it has the same principles. And that's awesome that you're doing that, because so many people succeed in life and they crush it, but they don't have, the spiritual, the intellectual, the family relations, they have a wheel, but it's kind of wompy. They're crushing it in business, but they're not doing all the rest of the things. So I'm curious, if you were to share with our audience, what would you say joining a mastermind has done for you and your business? You've been a part of GoBundance for a couple of years now, and what has it done for you?
I can't even articulate what it's done for me. I mean, it has been absolutely incredible. So, yeah, March will be 2 years for me, so not even quite 2 years. But the corporate career that I was in for almost 20 years, I just had really grown to just loathe it, right? And again, negative energy, that's what you're putting out in the world. And so finally being able to be encouraged to take that step. I do think I was fortunate enough that I was like at this exact pivot point in my life too when I joined. had done enough things right to be able to take some of those calculated chances as an entrepreneur. Also had a girlfriend, now wife, that was very supportive of taking that chance and walking away from a successful corporate career, but one that made me unhappy. And so, to your point, just looking at those other pieces, as far as your support system, a lot of people crush it in business, but they ignore a lot of other aspects of their life. And the older that I get, just looking at some of those folks, and it just becomes a game of accumulation. And regardless of the number they hit, they're still miserable. I didn't want to be that guy, and so I'm really happy that I've kind of hit a point. I'm really trying to bring people up with me, right? And I want other people to be able to experience the same financial freedom and independence through making some of these changes. And if you're around, it's just like we said about positivity and putting that out in the world. It's the same exact same thing with a mastermind group, right? I mean, if you're around a group of similar thinkers, and just these guys just want to help for the sole purpose of helping, right? There's no hidden agenda. They're not trying to sell you something. We are happy when you succeed. If you say that you made $1 million on a deal, that's, you generally can't post that on social media because of the negative backlash or jealousy or whatever, right? But this group is like, that's amazing. How'd you do that? Like, what can I learn from this, right? It is a genuine support from a group of guys that have a very similar mindset and also want to give back to the world. So it's been life-changing for me. It is actually the first one that I've joined. They put us in these little pods. We've got 5 guys. We just added a 5th guy to our pod. I love it, man. Like every Monday morning when we chat at 9, I look forward to it every week. I love those guys. We work through problems that we're each facing and how best to solve them, regardless of the area of our life, whether it's business or something that we're going through, a challenge personally or anything like that. So it has been absolutely life-changing for me to have that, have access to that environment and the quality of people that are in that group.
Yeah, so if you're a contractor listening in and you want more information on GoBundance, there is a website, gobundance.com, and make sure you tell them I sent you because they give me a little reward for sending people their way. I personally joined about a year ago, and I plan on doing it every year I plan on doing it every year because the retreats, the vacations, hanging out with the cool dudes, doing epic challenging stuff, and now I'm creating my own mastermind for contractors where we're going to do similar things, but it's going to be contractor centric. And with that being said, Josh, if somebody wants to, if they're looking at the Smoky Mountains or they're looking and the Carolinas and they're considering they want to maybe buy some real estate out there, I know you have coastal vacation properties as your company. How can they reach out to you?
Sure. Yeah. So our website is Stay CVP. So Coastal Vacation Properties is the CVP. So staycvp.com. And there's a contact form on there so they can submit an inquiry, and I'm happy to reach out. There's also a Calendly link if they want to schedule time to chat. So if they're looking at, again, I look at things as an investor, right? So if they're looking at a specific property, they want a revenue estimate on what that property might bring in as a short-term rental. We're happy to put that stuff together. We do it all the time for potential clients. So yeah, happy to help if anybody's looking at those markets.
Joshua, this has been blast, brother. Thanks for being on the Real Construction Owners podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.